reduced the speed limit here. They really slowed things down. Everybody's gotten tickets. Yes, I grew up in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn. It's actually very close to the Queens border. We used to say Ridgewood, but it was actually still part of Bushwick section. That was, I grew up, I think we moved there when I was maybe 3 years old, just before World War II. One time we were here for holidays. We usually joined here. My father did all the cooking, and they started playing some music. And one of the songs was the Italian, they call it the mazurka. And I knew the step. So I grabbed my grandmother, and we were doing the mazurka. It's a three-step. And the first time in my life that I saw her smiling, it was very interesting. And she was actually smiling. So happy. So I felt happy. I saw her smiling. So it was a pleasant childhood. Of course, we were not aware of exactly what was happening during the war. We, I was still pretty young. So. But it was good. People knew each other. You knew your neighbors. Neighborhood was safe. And you walked to your school, which was a few blocks away. The church was right around the corner. In fact, the house I grew up in, the back wall, concrete wall, was the wall on the other side, the other street. That was the convent. So it was a very nice way to grow up with a lot of friends. And we used to play in the streets. You could see. You have to imagine this street now with no cars on it. If you see no cars here, then you'd say there's a neighborhood. So we used to come out, mark the streets. The manhole covers would be home plate, second base, and we'd play the street. We was happy little kids, happy as can be. And this is the one. This is my house.
The yellow one?
Yeah, right here. Yes. The other houses, almost every house was kept beautifully neat. The streets were spotless. Everybody was out washing the streets. But that's the house, I think it's 83 Hart Street. I used to live here. I grew up here. Oh, you speak Spanish? Yeah. And my school was local, went to the 6th grade, and I was skipped in the 4th grade. Now you have to understand, at that time, the grades were labeled 1A, 1B, 4A, and I got skipped in the 4A to 4B category. And the school was so close. My mother only walked me to school the first day I went to school. After that, I walked myself. And you got to a corner, you would just wait till the next adult came by, and he would cross you, even though the street was no wider than this room. And people would, they'd say, sure, come on. They'd take you by the hand and take you across. I can't imagine that happening today. I never thought much about it until recently. I've seen students applying to college and, filling out 20 applications and going here, there, and everywhere. I had an interesting experience in high school. The Ford Foundation was carrying on an experimental program. They were going to issue 100 scholarships to students who academically achieved things and who also had some financial need. And they planned that exam, I think, at the end of the sophomore year or the beginning of the junior year, I don't remember. And you had to determine if they wanted to take junior students out of high school and place them to college a year early, and then follow them for 10 years and see what effect it would have. So you had to take a test. So I had nothing to lose. There were 100 scholarships, and there were 4 universities participating in it, in the program. And you had to designate the university you would go to beforehand. Okay, Columbia was one, Northwestern was another. I don't remember the other 2. In fact, I'm not even sure it was Northwestern. And they would pay your tuition fully. I was planning to go to the CCNY City University. That was my goal, and in the Harlem area. I thought I was headed for that, and I would have been accepted. But anyway, I took an exam. I don't even remember anything about the exam. I don't know if it was an SAT or what it was, and went home. But you had, as I said, you had to designate the college you would go to if you got the scholarship. I got a letter, I don't know, a month later, a few weeks later, saying that I didn't get the scholarship. It was based, as I said, on academic achievement and financially. We weren't rich. You know, my father was a photographer and a working man, and salaries were, you know, $4,000 a year probably. At any rate, I said, fine, I go about my business. And a few weeks later, I got a letter from Columbia saying that if I wanted to come to Columbia next year, I didn't have to apply. So, this is a dilemma because I then spoke to my dad. I said, I got this letter, and my dad was not formally educated man. He came from Italy at the age of 20, 21 or 22. But he was a very bright guy, very good father. So I said, I don't know what to do. He said, CCNY is free, Columbia has tuition. So he asked me, what do you think would be better for you in the long run? I said, probably going to Columbia would be a little more acceptable. So I said, go, we'll work it out. And that's how I ended up at Columbia. I never filled an application to college, not a single one. This is my wife at the age of 39. This is, oh, I'm sorry. This is the right side pictures when she was about 17 years old. Of course, I didn't know her then. And the picture on the left is at the age of 65. Well, my first daughter, Barbara, was born in McAllister. She's an Okie. She was born the following May, and it was a very pleasant time because there was a lot of help around, a lot of young people. At that time, it was the United Naval Ammunition Depot, and when I went into the Navy, there was a house for the doctor on the base. You had to go to the gate. Outside the base, there was a whole stretch of apartments for everybody else. The officers were supposed to be on base. But before we got there, there was one of the officers moved into the house. He had a wife and a lot of little kids. He was a young man, he had kids. So Barbara and my wife and I said, let him take the house. We don't need it. We have no children. So I ended up living with the other guys, you know, the non-commissioned officers. And it turned out to be very nice because we had made a lot of friends. So Barbie, our daughter, got a lot of attention, and it turned out to be quite pleasant. When I got out, after that, Marion was born 2 years later, the second daughter, and Jacqueline, the third one, was born when I completed my chief residency, and we moved to Howard Beach in 1966. And then Andrew was born a few years later, and then we had actually a boy after that, another baby a couple of years later, but he died. He had a complex congenital heart. He died on the third day. And then after that, we had our last child, another girl, of course, Maureen. So
as your wife and 5 daughters, as the only male in the house for a long time, how was that living?
Well, I'll tell you a story that I tell everybody else. As the kids were growing up, I said this 1,000 times, I started to shout and scream, okay? And of course, nobody listened to me, and I realized that was a futile process. So then I started to do mediation. You know, I tried to bargain with, you know, my wife and the girls, and of course that was a total failure also. So that I decided that the best thing was to keep my mouth shut and let them do whatever they want, and that worked out just fine. Everybody was happy. So that's what happens when you have a lot of girls in the house, particularly when they're teenagers. if you're going to do something in this life, you have to enjoy what you're doing. And everything else becomes secondary.